That's a damn coaching mistake.
Opinion.
The customer is the one who decides when the future gets here.
Oh, no! The ship is on fire!
You have to check the report.
Are you kidding me?
That game was fixed.
And overall infotainment.
I'll take Jim Harbaugh.
What has he done?
Crazy cootie coming at you.
Quiet, please. In exactly 15 seconds, we'll be on the air.
Thanks, big fella.
Don't you ever come back here again.
No arguments. Those are called ass tunes.
So buckle up.
You talking to me?
It's time for The Drive with Jack Ebling.
Yeah, for some reason or another, you sound a little taller on radio.
Great afternoon, Mid-Michigan and beyond, and welcome to The Drive with Jack. It is the Spotlight Radio Network. Jack Ebling here with my producer, Alex Heward. All of our Wednesday shows brought to you by Graf of Okemos. That is Graf Chevrolet and Graf Nissan, side by side on West Grand River. 107 years in the automobile business. Stop and see Matt, Mark, and Greg on West Grand River, and they will take great care of you, as they have on all 7 of my leases and purchases. Alex, we are going to be back out on the road tomorrow for a very special Veterans Day remote, and that will be at 1 North on West Saginaw. A lot of people might know that as the old Reno's West, but tremendous job there.
Oh, yeah. Have you been out there yet?
I've been out there several times. I'm working my way through the menu.
Yeah, no, they have a fantastic menu. Their buffalo cheese dip or whatever. Buffalo chicken dip that they make.
Yeah.
My gosh, it's so good. But yeah, great selection of beers and just an awesome atmosphere. They really cleaned that place up, and it's definitely one of the better food locations, I would say, on the west side of Lansing.
And the owner, proprietor, Scott Berman, is a big fan of Alex Heward.
Is that so?
That is so.
Yeah.
Something about baseball.
Yeah,
telling me,
yeah.
Alex is a great guy. I said, well, you're talking about the past. No, I said, yeah, he is. So anyway, he's a fan of yours.
Yeah, he coached me about maybe my sophomore or junior year summer baseball team that he put together, Michigan Prep Stars. We traveled all around the place. We actually went down to what was the tournament in Georgia? It's the number 1 amateur tournament in the country each year. So we actually were able to get down there for that. And
were you a shortstop then?
Yes, I was. Yeah,
okay.
So I was the shortstop for that team. We were pretty young. That was an 18 or 19U tournament. We were like 16, 17. We didn't have much business being down there, but it was a great experience. Probably one of the better summer tournaments and summer atmospheres that I've experienced from the baseball standpoint. So, it was a fun summer for sure.
We're really looking forward to this tomorrow, Veterans Day, and we are going to be honoring and saluting all 5 branches of service, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard in a special luncheon. This is a Rotary-sponsored event. At lunch, and then I'm hoping some people stick around and some other listeners who always ask, when are you going to be out again? When are you going to be on the road? When are you going to be here? When are you going to be there? Well, this is a chance tomorrow. I know it's early, okay? I get it. I understand that people work during the afternoons. Trust me. But if you want to break away, we're actually going to start a little bit early. We're going to start around 3. So if you can break away, you want to stop and see us. Stephen Brooks is going to be out there. We're going to have a lot of other special guests. We're going to have a tribute to Veterans Day, and we'll talk about some of the great veterans in sports who have done amazing things at an advanced age. But we're going to talk about veterans and service to the country as well, and that's tomorrow afternoon at 1 North. Okay. Last night, very interesting night for college basketball and football fans, Alex. And let's start with the hoops. And Michigan State facing number 3 Kansas in the Champions Classic, year 11. Michigan State going for its 5th win and unable to get that, actually led 31-30 over the Jayhawks. And from that point on, a late Kansas flurry to end the first half. Michigan State made a brief run in the second half, and then Kansas pulled away for an 87-74 win. Did you get a chance to watch any of that?
Yeah, I caught most of it. For the positives, I would say AJ Hogard. He looked. I thought he took a clear step forward from last season, and he looks like he's going to be a pretty solid player for Michigan State.
How about the improvement with that guy, right?
Yeah, I mean,
not just losing the 23 pounds.
Yeah, the physical transformation, but obviously his game is just improved as well. Like there's no hesitancy to anything that he's trying to create. His ability to attack the rim was fantastic last night. So I thought that was a bright spot. And then obviously the rebounding, it seems like they're going to get that back on track a little bit. I'm not certain, but I know they out-rebounded them the first half. I'm not sure if they finished the game that way, but it certainly seemed like they made an emphasis attacking the boards, especially on the defensive end. But
finished with a 37-30 rebound advantage. Now, one of Kansas frontline players, Jalen Wilson, was not in uniform. But David McCormick, who's considered to be a premier big. And I thought Michigan State had two very positive elements to an otherwise disappointing night. You mentioned one. You mentioned A.J. Hogard and the way he played, and he seemed confident. He seemed fearless. He was determined. He did a lot of things right, and he didn't start the game. He came in to relieve Tyson Walker, who left with 2 fouls 4 minutes in and seemed to have some jitters. He wasn't the only Spartan that looked that way. I don't think you saw the real Max Christie last night. Looked very different than he did in the exhibition games.
Very timid.
Yeah.
Still trying to find his spot, I think.
Yeah. I thought that you're going to see a much different Christie throughout this. And Jaden Akins, I thought, looked like deer in the headlights. So those two guys as freshmen and Tyson Walker as transfer.
I'm just going to say I would add Tyson Walker to the mix, too. He kind of seemed out of sorts, just trying to find where he belonged, within the group that he's playing with. So I expect that all three of those guys that you mentioned, I expect to shake that off as the season rolls on and to improve mightily. But I would say another glaring concern is it just doesn't seem like Joey Hauser is really improved much from last season. He kind of still looks like the same guy. Obviously, it's still very early game one, and you're playing against Kansas, who is a tremendous big man. But I was expecting, or hoping, I guess, that we would see the Joey Hauser that we were advertised, prior to him getting to Michigan State. That how he had COVID last year, and that can derail any kind of athlete. So I was kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt, hoping that we would see that it was a Marquette version. Is it Marquette?
Right.
Of Joey Hauser, but I'm not really seeing it. I mean, obviously, it's still a long way to go, but I'm not really seeing it.
I didn't see it in the 2 preseason games or the open practice, and maybe it's me. We all have players who, for whatever reason, appeal to our eye. And again, it's not our team to coach. But for whatever reason, we have players whose games we like and players whose games we do not like or do not fully appreciate. And I'm waiting for Joey to show up. I will say that I thought there was a major plus in the game last night. And I think it was even more important than A.J. Hogard. And that was the play of the fives. I did not expect Marcus Bingham to have 10 points and 7 rebounds in 18 minutes. And he looked very good, other than missing some threes that were wide open that I think he will hit.
Yeah.
His shot is not broken. He just missed them. And I think you're going to see, hey, he matched David McCormick in points, out-rebounded him, tripled it, and only played 18 minutes. And then Julius Marble came in, and he had 13 points and 7 rebounds in 16 minutes. So in 34 minutes, Alex, not even a full game, because there were a few minutes there for Matty Sissoko, and I think they briefly tried Joey Hauser at the 5 too. But between Bingham and Marble in 34 minutes, they had 23 points and 14 rebounds and did a great job on a guy who is projected to be an all Big 12 center.
Yeah.
So if they can play that way, if Marcus Bingham can hold his ground in the middle and show an offensive game, And Julius Marble plays that way. That's the way he played last year against Duke.
Yeah, no, Marcus Bingham for sure. He's taken a clear step forward from a physical standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, you can definitely tell he's not a walking stick anymore. I mean, he's not a beefy guy, but he definitely, you can tell he's got a little bit more girth to him. And then Julius Marble, especially right out of the gate, coming in off the bench and scoring like I think a quick four. Had a few good takes to the basket. So yeah, those are two guys that you're gonna have to need. I mean, you're gonna need to take a step forward this season if you're gonna have any type of success. And those are the kind of names that you're always looking for with the Michigan State team. Like who's gonna be that guy from last year we weren't talking about that's gonna kind of emerge.
Right.
And those are definitely two top candidates for sure.
Well, if they can get that kind of play out of Hogard, Bingham, and Marble, I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you Tyson Walker's going to play better. And I am almost as sure that Max Christie is going to play better. He struggled last night, 3 for 10 from the field, 9 points. You know, you think about Christie and Akins and Walker, 3 newcomers. The fourth, Pierre Brooks, Jr. did not play, but those other 3 combined for 9 points. And I would be disappointed if Max Christie alone didn't have double figures most games. So I would expect those guys to play better. Gabe Brown, foul trouble as well, and I think he got sent to the bench on what was a clear block. They called a foul on him. But he only shot the ball 9 times, and he played 30 minutes. He needs to be much more assertive because he's a good enough shooter that he should be shooting the ball at least once every 2 minutes. So if he plays 30 minutes, he should get up 15 shots.
Yeah.
And if he's not doing that, then he's doing too much head down and barreling to the basket. But I mean moving without the ball, and it's different this year, Alex, because they have point guards who I think will get them the ball in shooting position. Last year, that was not always the case. In fact, it was often not the case with Rocket and with Foster. Foster banged up, and there were physical limitations there. So I think that the point guards will do a better job of that, and Gabe has to make himself a factor. So that leaves the 4 position. And you talk about Joey Hauser and Malik Hall, and I think this has the potential to be a problem for most of the year. If Malik Hall doesn't play better or the real Joey Hauser doesn't show up, they're going to get taken advantage of at that position. But Kansas, hey, you know, you have to hand it to them. This was not their A team. And, you know, you got a guy like Ochai Agbaji, Ochai Agbaji, and, you know, can't play much better than he did. He was outstanding, and 29 points, dominant, shot better than 50%, shot 50% from 3, didn't miss a free throw. He was clearly the best player on the court.
Yeah, he was without a doubt the difference maker in that game. I mean, coming back, I think the glaring negative thing but it's kind of an ongoing problem is the turnovers too.
Sure,
Michigan State, and it's not just
16,
the number,
right?
It's 16, but it's the type of turnovers that they're making. It's giveaways for touchdowns and just careless, you know, throwaways that you should be just looking at those turnovers on film. I mean, you should have been able to cut half of those out from last night's game, and then obviously with Ochai Agbaji or. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I mean, he was lights out. He was terrific.
And I think they can, and I think they will cut out some of those turnovers. Not all of them.
Yeah.
But the one where Max Christie's all alone on the wing and he steps out of bounds.
Yeah.
And they had some others like that. They had some lazy passes, some soft passes. And Michigan State seems determined to reassert itself as a rebounding team, which it was not last year. And I think there's evidence that might happen.
Yeah.
But taking care of the ball, you know, the ball is a gem. It's a jewel. You have to protect it. And Michigan State is not good enough that it can have twice as many turnovers as the opposition and beat a top 3 team. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, no.
Especially when you miss free throws the way Michigan State did. And that's something that Spartans are going to have to clean up. We saw that in exhibition game, and a lot of people said, well, is this going to be a problem? And they'd shot the ball well in practice, so the idea was no, it would not. But last night, yes, indeed, it was. 9 for 16, including the front ends of 1-and-1s. And Kansas made 19 free throws out of 24. So anytime a team makes 3 more free throws than you attempt, you're going to lose.
Yeah, that's a tough one to overcome. I mean, taking a step back, am I super encouraged by last night? No, obviously not. But I'm also not demoralized by any means. I still think this is a team that, if they played Kansas 5 times, I think they win 2 or 3. I didn't see that big of a gap.
I don't think they'd win 3, but I think they would beat them. They beat them. Maybe 1, maybe 2 could beat them that way.
Yeah, I just don't think they're that far apart. But I think the biggest concern when you're looking at it is how well are they going to compete in the Big Ten, because the Big Ten is going to be very, very good.
Sure.
And I think that's the biggest thing that we're going to have to, have a little perspective on when the season's rolling on, is if they're not, 9-1, 10-0 in the Big Ten.
Right.
If they're 6-4, like that, you they could play pretty damn well.
Yeah.
And finish be 6-4 at some point in the season with the Big Ten, the way that shakes out. So I don't think they're a bad team. I think they're improved.
Yeah.
But I'm not overly optimistic either from what I saw and just what I'm looking at in the Big Ten and how they're going to shake out this season. But we'll see. I mean, I think there's a lot they can improve on. And then the one thing we touched on with the rebounds, I think that's one big thing I wanted to see, just a sign that they were kind of back to their identity again. So that was good to see, I guess. But yeah. Number 3 team, Kansas, first game of the season. How many times have we seen them look much, much worse than that in the first game of the season and turn out to have a pretty darn good season? So I'm not putting too much into it.
One thing that struck me was Ochai Agbaji looked at the NBA in the offseason and decided to return. Aaron Henry looked at the NBA and decided to go. Now, if you add Aaron Henry to the Michigan State roster, or if you subtract Ochai Agbaji from the Kansas roster, now you have a little bit different picture. But the thing that I was most concerned with in looking at Michigan State's chances to match up in the Big Ten, and that is center play in a conference where you have a Hunter Dickinson and you have a Trevion Williams, and you've got Ohio State, and Purdue certainly is, it's got a couple of them, and you can go around this league and find lots of quality centers. I feel better about Michigan State's chances now with that, and this is a very, very young team. I mean, you have guys who eyes were very big going into Madison Square Garden, and you can tell them, hey, you know what, the rim is still 10 feet, all that. You can do that whole Hinkle Fieldhouse speech from Hoosiers. But the fact is, you still have to be there in that environment. You look over and you see Bruce Springsteen, and you see all the people who are there, and it's a little bit of a different environment than they're used to playing in high school. And in some cases, they really didn't get a real high school season last year. So for those guys, I think that they will come out of it. In most cases, are they going to be a top 5 team, as Michigan State fans hope for, and in many cases almost expect? Probably not. Are they going to be a team that's relevant and plays Michigan State basketball? Last year, Alex, and I told Tom this, I said this was the most un-Izzo-like team I've ever seen. You didn't know it was Michigan State. Mm-hmm. You watch them out there, and it's kind of casual and diving for balls and didn't rebound.
Being out-rebounded.
Yeah.
Consistently out-rebounded.
Consistently. Just didn't look like the same program. Mm-hmm. But I think that they're going to get back to some of that, and I think you're going to see a much different Tyson Walker and Max Christie down the road.
Yeah.
And if Gabe Brown plays the way that he is capable of playing in flashes, does that consistently, and we'd heard about his maturity, but, he's got to go do it.
No, I think they're going to be a significantly better rebounding team, and I think they're going to have significantly better point guard play this season. Obviously, I don't think we saw that tremendously from Tyson Walker last night, but I think he's another guy like Max Christie that are going to have these are going to be their floor games. Let's
Right.
put it that
That's
way.
right.
When we look in the rearview mirror, 20 games into the season, I think we look back at these being one of the worst games of the season. So
Yeah.
I think when you're looking at that, better point guard play, back to rebounding the ball. I mean, I still think there's some signs of optimism to be had for this team.
And we talked about which transfer point guard was going to play better. Remy Martin, who was the leading scorer in the Pac-12 last year at Arizona State, or Tyson Walker, who was first-team All-Conference and Defensive Player of the Year in the Colonial at Northeastern, and it's pretty clear who got the best of that. Remy Martin was scoreless in the first half, had 15 points in the second half, and you get one basket, and that's it for Tyson Walker, and he didn't even attempt to shoot the ball. So with that, pretty well tells you what kind of an outcome you're going to get. Between games, we got version 2 of the college football playoff rankings, and seen a lot of Michigan fans today crowing and beating their chests now that they can move ahead of Michigan State in the rankings, if not on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
And Michigan moved up to number 6. Michigan State number 7 really doesn't mean anything. We'll see what happens in the last 3 weeks. I just found it interesting that the committee said, hey, head-to-head with Oregon over Ohio State. I think everyone would agree that Ohio State has played better, been much more dominant and in control of games than Oregon has since September 11th. That's September 11th, almost exactly 2 months ago. But head-to-head. So Oregon is ahead of Ohio State, but in a game that was played 11 days ago. Head-to-head doesn't seem to matter as much, and I get it. Hey, if you want to try to convince me that Michigan is a better football team than Michigan State, you know what? You might be right. If you look at the statistics, you would be right, especially when you're talking about a program that is 130th in pass defense. So I'm not saying that Michigan State deserves to be any higher than they are. I'm just saying if you're going to have a head-to-head criterion that matters so much, people are saying, well, what about Ohio State and Oregon? Well, if it comes down to those two teams and they're going to stick with that, something that happened back in week 2 of the season, then maybe they should apply that across the board. I didn't have a big problem with this, but some other people did. David Pollack, who was on the panel, the broadcast, was outraged. Paul Feinbaum today talked about this being one of the big surprises, and he had a meltdown when he saw that Michigan State was ranked behind Michigan, and he's no great Spartan lover. This is not something that was a passion for him. He's just saying that, hey, you know what? Let's be consistent. Let's apply the rules. I think it's much ado about nothing, frankly.
That's, I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking the difference between 6 and 7, and they both have 2 monster games left on their schedule. So it's going to shake itself out regardless. So, I mean, I at the end of the day, I'd rather have the win over Michigan and be ranked 7th behind them. 10 days out of 10, I think every Michigan fan is lying if they would say otherwise. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean,
trying to find a Band-Aid wherever you can.
I can get how you could say Michigan. I mean, when you're, 'cause if you're just looking at them, both resumes separately. I mean, Michigan has one loss to Michigan State on the road.
Yep.
Michigan State has what we would call a bad loss to Purdue, even though I think Purdue is actually pretty tough and played pretty well.
Should have been ranked a week ago, but
you
they
look
are
at
now.
those as their 2 losses. One lost to a top 10 team on the road, one didn't. So we give them the edge. I get it, I guess.
Yeah, it's fine.
But then don't tell me that head-to-head really matters. That's the end of the day. I mean, just don't tell me the rankings are strongly weighted towards head-to-head if that's how you're going to shake it out. But like at the end of the day, though, I don't care. It really doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I guess it gives you a little bit of, trash talk material.
Sure, that's what
for
it
a
is.
few weeks, I guess. But I mean, it really doesn't.
And if you want to really feel good about that and ignore the fact that your team has won 4 of the last 14 meetings in the series, and have at it. But I would just tell Michigan State fans that 6 years ago, after Michigan State fell to 8-1. That is a familiar sounding record these days. Fell to 8-1 with a loss at Nebraska in an ugly game. It wasn't ranked in the top 10 in the college football playoff projections. In fact, it was way out of it. And the fact that it came back with a win at Ohio State, with a closing win against Penn State, and with a win in the Big Ten Championship to be seeded third, not fourth, then it shows you that there is a ground to be made up and there will be considerable chaos the rest of the way. Okay. We're going to take a break, and when we get back, we're going to talk with a couple people about what they saw last night from Michigan State basketball. And Rod Barmack from the Final Four is not on the schedule, which is a fascinating podcast. If you're a Michigan State basketball fan, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of information coming from these guys who do this. And Rod is going to join us now. And then Trent Bally, and I think he just walked into the studio, is going to join us. He is just back from New York, working for Impact, and there last night for Michigan State and Kansas, and also the first of many farewell tour stops for Mike Krzyzewski. I don't know if he's going to have to declare all of these gifts on his income tax, but he better have another room for him by the time he's done. We'll be right back on The Drive with Jack.
What makes Culver's Butterburger one of America's best-loved burgers? Our fresh, never-frozen beef is made from the highest quality cuts for richness and flavor. We press that beef into a very hot grill after you order, and that's how we get that nice caramelized edge. Then we lightly butter and toast the bun.
That's what makes it a Culver's Butterburger. Let us craft one for you today. Welcome to Delicious.
As families and communities across Michigan gear up for an historic back-to-school season, Dean Transportation is looking for compassionate people to join their dedicated team of school bus drivers. They offer competitive wages and paid training, quality benefits, flexible schedules, and most of all, endless opportunities to make a difference. Apply today at deanjobs.com to join this critical effort to help students return to learn this fall. deanjobs.com.
NBC News Radio, I'm Lisa Taylor. Kyle Rittenhouse is getting emotional as he describes a deadly encounter during a social justice protest last year.
I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski, and there were
The 18-year-old is accused of opening fire on protesters in Kenosha, Wisconsin during civil unrest over a police shooting last year, killing 2 men. He says one of the victims, Joseph Rosenbaum, threatened to kill him. The judge called for a brief recess after Rittenhouse broke down on the stand. The White House COVID response team is cheering efforts to get vaccines into the arms of kids across the U.S. COVID response coordinator Jeff Zients said the campaign to vaccinate children is hitting full strength this week. He noted roughly 900,000 kids have been vaccinated since federal health officials authorized Pfizer shots for kids 5 to 11. Lisa Taylor, NBC News Radio.
Jack Ebling here with Matt Sloan at Graph of Okemos. Matt, people buying cars different ways now with inventory changes.
They certainly are, Jack. It's a wild time, but we're still selling them. You might not see them on the lot, but they're still coming in every day, and we're still delivering them. So what we're finding is a lot of people, they come in, and they actually place an order for the vehicle instead of finding one on the lot that they want. Then that comes in within 7-8 weeks, and they take delivery.
We'll still want that great Graph service. They're making friends.
Say you had the greatest job in the world, crafting pumpkin fresh frozen custard desserts at Culver's. Here would be your typical day. Pour farm fresh dairy into the custard maker and run continuously. Add real pumpkin puree and pumpkin pie spice, then craft our pumpkin spice shake or salted caramel pumpkin concrete mixer.
Just like that, pumpkin's back at Culver's, but not for long. Welcome to Delicious.
A much different feel to the opening night of college basketball around the country with fans back in the stands, and it was also the start of Mike Krzyzewski's final season as Duke head coach. And his 9th-ranked Blue Devils beat number 10 Kentucky 79-71 at Madison Square Garden in New York.
Felt so good with the Garden crowd playing against an outstanding team. I mean, they're tough, and we're tough. That was a big-time game.
Freshman guard Trevor Keels led Duke with 25. Also in New York, number 3, Kansas over Michigan State, 87-74. The new college football playoff rankings have Georgia at number 1, followed by Alabama, Oregon, and Ohio State at number 4. Cincinnati is 5th. His former girlfriend has accused Vikings running back Dalvin Cook of abusing her, causing a concussion. Cook denying the allegations, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune reporting that he says he was the one assaulted. That's sports. Frank Garrity, NBC News Radio.
You're listening to The Drive with Jack Epling.
Sorry if you're offended by that.
SpotlightMediaStudios.com.
Welcome back. It is The Drive with Jack, the Spotlight Radio Network. All of our Wednesday shows brought to you by Graf of Okemos, 107 years in the automobile business. And a reminder, tomorrow we're going to be on the road. We're going to start an hour earlier, and from 3 to 5, we will be at 1 North on West Saginaw. Stephen Brooks from 24/7 Sports will be with us. We'll have a number of other special guests. Our special Veterans Day show. Alex, let's go out to our guest line, and happy to bring in Rod Barmack. And if you don't know the name, maybe you have heard of the podcast. And if you haven't, you might want to check it out, because the Final Four is not on the schedule. That's what it's called. The Final Four is not on the schedule. Is about as in-depth a look at Michigan State basketball as you are ever going to get. Rod Barmack, thanks for joining us.
Hi, nice to be with you, Jack.
Well, I was listening to your podcast late last night, and your discussion of what was impressive and what was depressing about Michigan State's performance, but maybe it wasn't quite like most 13-point wins, or 13-point losses, because when you have Marcus Bingham and Julius Marble combining for 23 points and 14 rebounds in 34 minutes in the middle, that's something that you might be able to build on.
Absolutely. I think, one of the first things you say is trying to extrapolate what Michigan State is going to look like in March from a game in early November. Yeah. I think history tells you that's a fool's errand, right?
Right.
But if you are looking for positives, I think the one you just hit on is perhaps the biggest, no pun intended, the way that the guys at the 5 spot played. And it should be noted, against pretty good opposition.
Yeah.
The Big Ten is going to be absolutely loaded with great play at the 5 this year. So to play against a guy like McCormick for Kansas and to play the way that they did, I think is a really, really strong indicator. Not surprising to me in regard to Bingham, because I think it was kind of an under-discussed point in MSU's stretch run last year where they got, managed to earn an NCAA bid by beating all those top 5 opponents.
Right.
Part of the reason for that was the way that Marcus Bingham played, and so he's just building on that. But I thought Julius Marble might have played his best game overall at MSU.
That one or the one against Duke last year, I think those are the two best, right?
But I think he might have been better last night than against Duke, because my issue with him has not been scoring.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Duke game. Well, he demonstrated he could score in that game, and we've seen it in other games too. It's the rebounding and the defense, because we all know you don't do those things, you're not going to see the floor very much under Tom Izzo. So
Michigan State with a +7 rebounding score last night after last year being a woeful rebounding team by Michigan State standards. But there were so many other problems, and again, casual with the ball, Rod. 16 turnovers, and the free throw shooting, I said at the beginning of the show, anytime you attempt 3 fewer free throws than your opponent makes, you're not going to beat a top 5 team.
That's right. That's the old Bob Knight equation.
Yeah.
I think have more makes than your opponent attempts.
Right.
But as you say, Michigan State, and Izzo harped on this a little bit post-game, Michigan State was their own worst enemy in that respect, because they missed, some front end of 1-on-1s. They limited even the number of attempts that they might have gotten by virtue of the way they shot. The turnover thing, I'm looking for silver linings here. And the only one I can really come up with is that for the most part, they were not the pick six variety that really drives Izzo crazy.
Yeah.
There were a few of those.
Yeah.
But it wasn't excessive. If you look at it, 16 turnovers in the game, Kansas scored 16 points off of those. It's not great, but it's not as bad as it probably should have been, to be honest. And some of that was, I think, that they had these dead ball turnovers. A number of them looked to me like guys playing their first game of the year or maybe even their first game of their collegiate careers,
right,
in some respects. So, let's put it this way. There were a couple of things that bothered me more in the game than the turnovers, which,
Well, one of them, I'm sure, was the defense.
Yeah,
and Michigan State historically does not produce a lot of takeaways. That's not the way the Michigan State defense is designed. But again, Kansas only turned it over 9 times, so Michigan State not doing much to force Kansas to go away from what it wanted to do.
I think the thing that got obscured last season a little bit by how bad the offense was at times and everybody's obsession with the point guard was that Michigan State defensively against two-pointers, which is really where they're traditionally very, very solid, was so bad. I mean, it was historically bad. If you go by the analytics, Ken Pomeroy's system, it was the worst defense against two-point shots Michigan State had played in 13 years last year. So that's a big area where they need to be better. And last night was not an example of that. I think you give Kansas a little bit of credit for what I thought for a first game was pretty good execution, it looked like to me. But even granting them that was not what you want to see in terms of MSU's perimeter guys being able to limit penetration by Kansas's ball handlers. I thought they, especially in the second half, when they stretched that lead out, Michigan State did not do a good job of walling up and preventing them from getting into the lane. And then, you got the results that you got. Kansas shot 53% from 2. That's too high a number if you're going to win. We know that.
Yeah, and we can talk about Tyson Walker going to play better. I'm convinced of that. Max Christie will be better. I'm fairly convinced of that. But there are a couple of things, and you alluded to both of them, that I think now are almost programmatic. They are not subject to an individual, and I think this is something that you take a long, hard look at. One of them is that the sloppiness with the ball and the casual passes didn't begin last night. And the other one is that this team for many years now has had a problem with fouls. Not that they're always fouling guys out of the game because they have enough depth that they keep shuttling them in, but they keep taking key players out of the game when they don't want to because they get too early fouls, and because of that, they're beating themselves.
Yeah, I thought one crystal clear example of that last night was Tyson Walker.
Yeah.
And he's just so important. And that's acknowledging that A.J. Hoggard played a really nice game overall, all of that. But I'm convinced this team cannot get to where they want to be and cannot be better than they were last year if Tyson Walker is not a huge part of it. He had one foul, and then you look at the play that he got the second foul on, he's got it. Not even his man, somebody else's man, not even the McCormick, I can't remember who it was, driving past him. He reaches in from the side to try and strip him and gets whistled. That's an automatic call. It's a high-risk play for a low positive outcome.
That's right.
And then he's got to sit the rest of the half.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that you have to avoid. He has to be smarter than that. And it's interesting, that people may know, I'm sure a lot of people do, that he was the Defensive Player of the Year in his conference last season.
Yeah.
So you have high expectations, but sometimes those awards go to guys that rack up a lot of steals. Well, that's not Michigan State basketball. You just said it. They're not predicated on forcing turnovers.
Right.
And it seems like Izzo's convinced that Tyson has figured out how he wants him to play defensively, but I thought that play was maybe an example of old habits creeping back in, and the cost is just way too high to Michigan State to have him doing that and taking those kind of chances.
And when you talk about the depth at the point, I think they're going to have many situations, Rod, where their best lineup is both of those guys on the floor. We saw Kansas play small last night, but I think you can find Max Christie on the wing. You can find Gabe playing kind of a 3-4-ish thing with one big. That is maybe a more productive lineup than you would get with Joey Hauser and his defensive limitations, or Malik Hall if he's not going to be shooting it, if he's going to make one basket. So there are lots of different ways, and I'm sure Izzo will figure it out. He gets paid to do that, and he's done it well for 27 years.
Yeah, I would offer one response to that. I think you could be right if Tyson Walker is going to be more willing to shoot than we've seen in the 2 exhibition games and last night.
Well, he averaged 18 points a game last year, so it's not like he's never shot the ball.
Exactly. And actually, I looked at it when he transferred to Michigan State. He played 6 games last year against high major we'll call mid-major plus, like UMass he played against, for example. His numbers were better against those opponents than they were against the teams in his conference. So he's done it, but we just haven't seen it in these 2 exhibitions and last night. And I maintain if he's not going to be much more aggressive than what we've seen, Michigan State can't be better than they were last year. It's a necessity.
Right.
Because I think he's so important to both ends improving this team. He just has to be more aggressive.
Well, we saw Ohio State last night, and they needed a defensive breakdown at the end, 2 guys guarding one player for Zeb Key to get a layup and for Ohio State to escape with a 1-point win over Akron in Columbus. And there will be other surprises, but I would guess that Michigan State will play better starting Friday night, 6:30 tip-off against Western Michigan.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's an opportunity for them to win. Let's hope, and to start getting better. I think it's as I said at the outset, anybody who's putting too much weight on the outcome of last night just hasn't paid attention for the last quarter century, right?
Right.
But you do want to see some of these things that we've been talking about improve, and at least incrementally. You want to see better dribble containment of defense. You want to see fewer mistakes with the ball. You want to see a better conversion rate at the line. And then hopefully you also see the good things. A.J. Hogarth's aggressiveness, the play of the guys at the 5 position, you want to see that continue as well. So that's what I'm going to be watching more so than, they need to win by X amount of points to feel good about this.
Rod Barmack, our guest. And Rod, you got 30 seconds to promote the Final Four is not on the schedule.
You can follow us on Twitter it's the acronym. It's but you can look it up. Final Four is not on the schedule. We do previews and reviews of each game that Michigan State plays. We've also done a pretty exhaustive preview of every Big Ten team, and of course, like a 2+ hour version of Michigan State, which would still be relevant since we're only one day into the season.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely check us out. It's a lot of content, yeah, we've been doing it for several years now. It's
the most in-depth analysis you are going to find on Michigan State basketball in print or broadcast. Rod, thanks so much for joining us. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We're going to stay right here, and we're going to welcome in Trent Bally from The Impact, and produced so many outstanding broadcasters at Michigan State. Welcome back from New York.
Thank you. Also, Jack, thanks for having me on the show. I mean, I'm a huge fan, so I appreciate this. Is just surreal right now.
Well,
I'm shaking.
The fact that you were there in MSG and you didn't leave with any of Mike Krzyzewski's gifts, did you?
I did not. I was looking for them laying around. I didn't find any.
Well, did you find any baskets laying around for Michigan State players that they didn't convert last night?
There were a few. I'm sure you're well aware. I mean, sitting here listening, I think the biggest thing the Spartans did was they turned the ball over 16 times, and you harped on that to a T. But, when you have fewer assists than turnovers in a game against the number 3 team in the country, albeit, Michigan State was unranked, and I think that term kind of gets thrown around. But, in context, they were 26th. So they're kind of right on that cusp, you understand that. So they expected to go in there and compete a little bit, and I think they did. And you and Rod alluded to the fact that the final score may not have been indicative of what the actual game story was, because the turning point of that game didn't really even come until about 13 minutes left, 15 minutes left. And then, when it got down the stretch, the Spartans were able to cut it to single digits a couple times. But ultimately, it was just turning the ball over and kind of, I think Tyson Walker disappointed, but I think everybody in this state who's watched the exhibitions and has had a close eye on him and has seen what he did at Northeastern knows that he's just better than that, and he will be.
Well, they lost by 13, and they had 12 fewer free throws. So that's basically your 13 points right there. But when you look at this team and assists, you make a great point, Trent, because sometimes Tom Izzo's teams assist on 85 to 90% of their baskets. Last night, not so much. Only 12 assists out of 29 makes. So that's about 40%. And that's not Michigan State basketball.
Not at all. I mean, you talk about some of the greatest point guards ever that have come through this program, and we don't have to get into all that. But, that was the biggest hole last year with this team. And it was painfully obvious in those, the UCLA game down the stretch and, those horrible losses to Maryland and Iowa, those 20-point losses. They didn't have anyone who could run the offense. You're forcing Rocket Watts to try to do it, forcing Aaron Henry to try to do it, and everyone knows that, so I don't want to expand on that too much. But that was the single biggest thing coming into this year was, can Hoggard and Walker step up and really take the bull by the horns and really be a floor general? And last night you got one of those guys to show up. Look, Tyson Walker ended up playing all right on defense, especially. He got 20 minutes a run, but only 4 minutes in the first half. And I give him a little bit of a pass just because I think that was your true first game jitters. I don't really count the exhibition game. And when you're on Madison Square Garden, again, against the third best team in the nation, I give you a little bit of a pass, no pun intended. But, I do agree with you that Michigan State basketball, the whole identity is point guard play, and that's going to be something to watch going forward for sure. And I do think they'll pick it up.
Point guard play and rebounding have been where they've hung their hat, and I think both of those areas will improve. And I think you're going to see a much better Max Christie as the season goes on. I would think that Gabe Brown is going to do more. You can't shoot 9 times if you're Gabe Brown. That's
Correct.
why you're out there.
Exactly.
But they have some other questions, especially at the 4 position. And I thought the centers last night, Marcus Bingham Jr. and Julius Marble, exceeded my expectations.
The only issue I had with the center play was that Marcus Bingham only had 18 minutes. I mean, I picked him. We do a podcast at the Impact about men's basketball, and we do season predictions, and I picked Marcus Bingham to be both my Defensive Player of the Year and my MVP prediction.
Wow, MVP, really?
In terms of, it depends how you coin the phrase,
Okay.
right? I always go most valuable in terms of when he's out there.
Yeah.
I don't have the plus-minus in front of me, but I'm sure Marcus Bingham's was one of the best on the team. I have to imagine.
Yeah.
For him to play that way, there was a stretch, I think it was it was probably 12 minutes into the game, and McCormick for Kansas, fantastic player, was 1 for 4 from the field. All of his misses were right at the hoop. Marcus Bingham had a block and 5 boards at that point.
And there were a couple of plays from each of them, Trent. You saw Marcus, and we saw him miss the open threes. That's what a lot of people are going to remember. But he took the ball in the wing, and he made a quick move and drove to the basket, went right around McCormick, who's a all Big 12 type center.
Yes.
And then Julius Marble, in a play that I have not seen from him since he's been on campus, diving over the bench, over the scorer's table.
Shaq style. He's got Shaq's number on, too. That's exactly what I thought of when I saw that.
To get that ball, and Tom Izzo had to love that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Julius Marble's whole thing is, if he's not hustling, I don't think he's going to play.
Yeah.
And that's no slight to him whatsoever. It's almost more a compliment to Marcus Bingham. I truly think Marcus Bingham is going to play around 25 minutes per game this season, and he only played 18 the other night. But Julius Marble's a guy who's scrappy, and he's a little limited on the defensive end, but he plays hard.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right, Jack. He got on the floor more than once last night, and that was, little things like that will prove to be a difference, maybe not against teams like Kansas, but against teams like Michigan, against teams like Purdue, Illinois, the upper echelon of the Big Ten, because we know how the Big Ten is. I mean, it's just, especially for big men.
Well, Michigan State's schedule is not forgiving. Besides opening with
to put it lightly.
Yes, opening with the number 3 team in the country, and this is no surprise. The people who know Tom Izzo, he has played more ranked teams than anyone else in the country since he's been at Michigan State. But after the Western Michigan game, again, that is an early tip. So if you're going to go to the game on Friday, don't get there at 7 or 7:30 because you're going to be very disappointed and embarrassed. It's a 6:30 tip. Then a week from tonight, I think we're both going to be in Indianapolis. You'll be at the Butler game.
Yes, sir.
We will be there for that at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Looking forward to that. And then Eastern Michigan comes in, so Michigan State gets another MAC opponent. Then off to the battle for Atlantis, and there are enough quality teams there that you'd better play well, starting with Loyola of Chicago.
Yes, absolutely. Just to look at it in a macro sense, Tom Izzo will die on that hill. I mean, he said it time after time after time in his press conference the other night after the game, just saying, I would rather my guys, he didn't say lose, but I'd rather my guys play a tougher opponent in the non-conference than win 7 or 8 games in a row, get patted on the back, and then you're not ready to roll when it's actually Big Ten time. So, I mean, we all, like you said, Jack, if you've paid any attention to Michigan State basketball the last 2+ decades, you know how it is, and the recipe usually works.
We're talking with Trent Bally, and he is, of course, a student broadcaster for the Impact, very knowledgeable, and get used to his voice because you're going to be hearing it some on this show and others. But from what you saw from Tom after the game, what made him happy, and sometimes there are things that are irritating him that he doesn't talk about. What do you think his real reaction was?
Well, I think, he strays away, I think, early season from ripping on individual players. Mm-hmm. We all know Tom Izzo, it's tough love. It is what it is.
Right.
He did mention Marcus Bingham needs to be more assertive in the post because he was 5 for 7 in the post and 0 for 3 when he left. Mm-hmm. So I think that was one of the big things that he didn't necessarily harp on until the very end.
Yeah.
And also, he wants Gabe Brown to be a lot more assertive.
Yeah.
Jack, you mentioned the team as a whole doesn't shoot that many free throws, but Gabe Brown's a 90% free throw shooter, and for him to only have 10 points the other night, he's going to have to be a lot better. And Tom also did say he truly believes Gabe Brown is 10 times better than he was last season.
All right. Moving ahead, what do you most want to see Friday night against Western Michigan?
I mean, I don't want to be redundant here, but I want to see Marcus Bingham play 25-plus minutes. This is also an opportunity, though, I think, for a guy like Mady Sissoko or, moving down the rotation a little bit. Maybe get Malik Hall back in a rhythm a little bit. Tyson Walker, obviously, you want to see him play a lot better, too, and I think this would be a great opportunity. The home fans are going to embrace the hell out of him. So, if he's able to go out there and put up, double-digit points, 6 or 7 assists, grab a couple steals, and the Spartans roll the Broncos, I think that would be a very successful night. Walker has to play well.
And Max Christie, when do you think we're going to see the Max we saw in the exhibition games?
Friday.
Yeah.
I really do.
I think back to some of Michigan State's best players, including its greatest player, and you could make the case the greatest in Big Ten history. And when Irvin Johnson debuted against Central Michigan in Jennison Fieldhouse, he had an abysmal game. I mean, not only did he not score, did he not really shoot the ball, did he foul too much, did he not defend, he turned it over constantly. And Michigan State wound up winning that game because his Lansing boyhood teammate and rival, Jay Vincent, came off the bench and scored 25 points in that game. That's the only reason Michigan State beat Central in that game. And Irvin would probably tell you that was one of the 3 worst games he ever played. So I'm thinking that for Max Christie last night, 9 points. It wasn't a horrific game, but it was nowhere near his standards. You'll see better.
Not at all. And, this is a guy who has potential to be a one-and-done player. We'll see. I don't think so. But, it's on the table.
Yeah.
And, these guys, it does take a second to get up to speed in Big Ten play, and we haven't even seen that yet, of course, but the Big 12 is comparable at least to the pace of play and the amount of talent and the offensive and defensive schemes.
All right, and Tyson Walker, you think we're going to see a different Tyson Walker back at Breslin?
I do. I think you could see a double-double.
All right. Sounds good. Trent Bally from Impact Radio, and you're going to be with us periodically throughout the season. We'll see you Friday night.
Thanks, Jack.
All right. We'll be right back, and Jim Stark is in the house from the Michigan Sports Legacy Conservancy. We'll be talking about baseball free agency and what the Tigers are doing. They already have a catcher, and they're going to be getting a shortstop and a couple of pitchers, Matt Shepard tells me. And then a little bit later, we hope that we're going to have Kyle Austin with us from MLive, and he'll also talk about Michigan State basketball recruiting. I think Tom Izzo addressing that too. We'll be right back on The Drive with Jack.
What makes Culver's Butterburger one of America's best loved burgers? Our fresh, never frozen beef is made from the highest quality cuts for richness and flavor. We press that beef into a very hot grill after you order, and that's how we get that nice caramelized edge. Then we lightly butter and toast the bun.
That's what makes it a Culver's Butterburger. Let us craft one for you today. Welcome to Delicious.
As families and communities across Michigan gear up for an historic back-to-school season, Dean Transportation is looking for compassionate people to join their dedicated team of school bus drivers. They offer competitive wages and paid training, quality benefits, flexible schedules, and most of all, endless opportunities to make a difference. Apply today at deanjobs.com to join this critical effort to help students return to learn this fall. deanjobs.com.
Airbnb is upgrading its app. First and foremost, hosts can now verify their Wi-Fi speeds so their guests won't miss a Zoom call or their favorite streaming show. Through an accessibility review, hosts submit photos of their features such as step-free access or wide doorways that accommodate people who use wheelchairs, and an Airbnb employee confirms it. The housing site is expanding the date range for flexible searches from 6 to 12 months. And lastly, Airbnb is introducing a translation engine that will automatically translate reviews and listing descriptions in over 60 languages. Facebook says users saw bullying or harassment 14 to 15 times out of every 10,000 views of content on the app between July and September, while Instagram users viewed such content 5 to 6 times out of every 10,000 over the same time period. Amazon says starting next year, they'll accept Venmo payments. Tech Report, Larry Olson, NBC News Radio.
Jack Ebling here with Matt Sloan at Graf of Okemos. Matt, people buying cars different ways now with inventory changes.
They certainly are, Jack. It's a wild time, but we're still selling them. You might not see them on the lot, but they're still coming in every day, and we're still delivering them. So what we're finding is a lot of people, they come in and they actually place an order for the vehicle instead of finding one on the lot that they want. Then that comes in within 7-8 weeks, and they take delivery.
We'll still want that great Graf service. They're making friends.
Say you had the greatest job in the world, crafting pumpkin fresh frozen custard desserts at Culver's. Here would be your typical day. Pour farm fresh dairy into the custard maker and run continuously. Add real pumpkin puree and pumpkin pie spice. Then craft our pumpkin spice shake or salted caramel pumpkin concrete mixer.
Just like that, pumpkin's back at Culver's, but not for long. Welcome to Delicious.
A much different feel to the opening night of college basketball around the country with fans back in the stands, and it was also the start of Mike Krzyzewski's final season as Duke head coach, and his 9th-ranked Blue Devils beat number 10 Kentucky 79-71 at Madison Square Garden in New York.
Felt so good with the Garden crowd playing against an outstanding team. I mean, they're tough, and we're tough. That was a big-time game.
Freshman guard Trevor Keels led Duke with 25. Also in New York, number 3, Kansas over Michigan State 87-74. The new college football playoff rankings have Georgia at number 1, followed by Alabama, Oregon, and Ohio State at number 4. Cincinnati is 5th. His former girlfriend has accused Vikings running back Dalvin Cook of abusing her, causing a concussion. Cook denying the allegations, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune reporting that he says he was the one assaulted. That's sports. Frank Garrity, NBC News Radio.
You're listening to The Drive with Jack Ebling.
So for all the doubters out there, stuff it!
SpotlightMediaStudios.com.
Welcome back. It is The Drive with Jack, the Spotlight Radio Network. All of our Wednesday shows brought to you by Graf of Okemos, Graf Chevrolet, and Graf Nissan. Stop and see Matt, Mark, and Greg on West Grand River. They will take great care of you. A reminder, tomorrow we are going to be out at 1 North on West Saginaw, the old Reno's West, for a special Veterans Day remote show. Looking forward to that. We're going to have big fun with all 5 branches of the military. There's a special Rotary-sponsored luncheon out there, but afterwards, drop out and see us, and we're going to do our show out there. A lot of people want us to be out in the community again. We did 130 straight weeks out at the Bluegill Grill, so it's good to be back out doing remote broadcasts. Okay. Alex, we're going to stay right here in studio and welcome in Jim Stark. He is Executive Director of the Michigan Sports Legacy Conservancy. He is a regular correspondent to this show about the Tigers and the Pistons, Major League Baseball, and the NBA. But, Jim, before we go there, you worked in Ann Arbor for how long?
Almost 25 years.
Do you understand why Michigan fans today are dislocating their shoulder, patting themselves on the back of the fact that the committee has now bumped them ahead of Michigan State in the rankings?
They are the most egotistical people you'd ever want to meet. Jack, I think I told you before, I remember that the station, which was I was on, was they were quote unquote Michigan's station, right? Mm-hmm. They would rather us talk about recruiting in the middle of summertime versus talking about the Tigers. They were so Michigan centric, and every single little movement they made was important news. Well, it wasn't important news. Come on, it's college football, but in that town, it's religion.
And if you were critical, or let's even say objective, let's say you said some of the things, and we talked about earlier about Michigan State's propensity for fouling or its inability to handle the ball out front, or you talk about a pass defense. It's 130th out of 130, where the Spartans are. What kind of reaction would that have drawn from your bosses?
Well, more than once, I was called into the office because of some of my comments that weren't, weren't appropriate. I think that's how they said it. Well, that's ridiculous because, first off, media is supposed to be independent, right? Mm-hmm. That's there's no one is owned, at least now maybe there are, but you were supposed to be owned and owing to any team or program. Yeah, right. You're supposed to be well, that's what I thought, right? And if I saw something, and I was there for the beginning of Rich Rod, mm-hmm. I was there for Lloyd, I was there for Moeller, and I was there. I think it was Moeller, on. So Moeller, Lloyd, and then the beginning of Rich Rod.
But you weren't an assassin. You didn't have an axe to grind.
Never.
You weren't waiting to
Well, that was the other thing.
Somebody.
The other thing was the station line was if you want cheap heat, you want to say fire the coach. Now they never said fire Michigan, but they would say fire the Lions. That was cheap. I didn't do. Let's talk about something intelligent. Not just say fire the coach. So I would bring up let's say Lloyd. Why did Lloyd call that timeout? Or why didn't he make that substitute? Or back in the day when Brady and Drew Henson, why did he pull Henson? So that was the kind of stuff, and we criticized sometimes.
Yeah.
But boy, there was a line. If you crossed it, you heard about it. And the thing is, it was kind of invisible, and the line moved depending on some people's mood.
I'm just curious, and hey, the committee can do whatever it wants to do. Michigan State put itself in this position with its performance at Purdue and its pass defense all season, and it's going to straighten itself out. Whatever it's meant to be, it will be. But it's just the reaction from some people today, and it's why when we have gone to Big Ten basketball tournaments, and sometimes they will take different fan groups and let them sing their fight song and put it up on the big screen during timeouts. Have people sing Hail Purdue or Minnesota Rouser, and but when they get that group together singing the victors, the entire crowd boos.
Well, I think part of it's because the Michigan contingent, they think that's the national anthem. They don't think it's a team song. You mean there's another song to sing besides Hail to the Victors? It's the grandest, what do they call it, the grandest song of them all or old or whatever. But they're very, very egocentric and arrogant. Nothing goes on outside Ann Arbor, right? That's the big thing. But I'll tell you right now, I don't care where they are in the rankings. If they don't beat Ohio State this year, everything goes in the toilet. Everything. I don't care what they've done. He has to beat Ohio State this year. It's that drastic for him.
Well, and this is, I think,
and by him I mean Harbaugh.
It's the weakest Ohio State team since 2011. We say that, and here they are, in the college football playoff. If it were held today, they'd be number 4. But I think that this Ohio State team definitely has holes, has flaws. We've seen that.
If they're ever, and not only if they have the opportunity to beat them, they have the need to beat them. Harbaugh is, I don't care how many games they've beaten Indiana, he's still on the bubble right now. And he's got to beat Ohio State because had they beat Michigan State, he had some room to work.
Yeah.
He lost to Michigan State. I guarantee you if he loses Ohio State, it's right back to where he was last year.
Let's talk about the Detroit Tigers. And we had Matt Shepard on the show earlier in the week, and he was talking about Tucker Barnhart, what he is going to bring.
Was he happy with him?
Very happy.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. And as much the fact that they got him was the way they got him. They didn't wait for free agency. They didn't wait to somebody come in and slicker him out of. They went and got him before for a prospect.
Right.
I would have given away any day.
Yeah.
Right.
Second round pick he was,
but he hasn't developed. And they got third baseman coming out their ears.
Yeah.
Right. So good move, but the fact that he's a defensive catcher, a left-handed hitter, so he meshes very well with Eric Haas. But it showed the aggressiveness and the vision now we're seeing out of Alavila / AJ Hinch. He didn't wait for something to happen. They made it happen. That's what I was encouraged about.
The first thing I heard about this trade, and frankly it was from people who should know better, Jim, what was his batting average and how many home runs did he hit? That has nothing to do with what his value is going to be. As a catcher, it's how's he handle pitchers, what kind of a pitch framer is he, how many strikes does he steal,
and you know, that's
does he
something
throw out a runner once in a while.
We never heard pitch framing until the last few years as far as a skill.
Yeah.
You hear it all the time now.
Yeah.
How many strikes does he gain?
Yeah.
How many? That's a stat. But what I like about him, too, is with this young pitching staff, a veteran catcher is not just essential, it's critical. Had they had to go with another year with some of these young guys, they needed this guy. And I'm almost glad that Jake Rogers got hurt because had Jake Rogers got hurt, they would never have got this guy.
Right.
But to me, he will make every pitcher they have better.
Well, I think when you have a guy who's been a 2-time Gold Glove winner, they don't give those things out.
Nope.
So, you have to earn them.
And one you could kind of write off, well, he had one good, 2 times, you repeat, you're a good player.
Yeah. Who knows? In the state of Michigan now, maybe there'll be 2 Tuckers that people are talking about, right?
That's right.
Mel and Barnhart.
Well, as long as one stays, we got one in a contract for 1 year.
That's right.
How about the other? That's the other one.
He's under contract, too.
I'm leaving him up to you, Jack. Your job to keep him here.
Yeah, way beyond my pay grade. Hey, when we talk about this Tigers team, Matt was not big on spending market value for the top shortstops, Carlos Correa. He said, hey, they have too many things they need, including pitchers.
Okay.
And he said, if you can get somebody for $20, $25 million, maybe, you talk about that. Or you can get somebody for a little more now. You want to go up to 28, but it's a shorter-term deal.
Yep.
And Marcus Semien, your guy, he's 32.
Yep. He's a little older.
So they're not going to be giving him an 8-year deal.
No, but that to me works in the Tigers' favor, though, because he's not going to sign a 10-year contract. And I think he realizes that. Now, what hurts him, though, is he keeps adding up awards. He set the major league record this year for home runs for second baseman.
Yeah.
Then he won the Gold Glove.
Right.
Now he's a finalist for the MVP in the American League.
One of 3 in the American League.
I mean, but the thing that's still in his advantage, he's a little older. He played second base, so the shortstop thing is not in everybody's front of it in the mind. Mm-hmm. And there's 5 of them. If this was just the 2, let's say it was just Semien and Correa.
Yeah.
They'd both be top. But the fact that there's 5 of them helps them. But I hope they have the same aggressiveness with the shortstop as they did with the catcher and go out right away, because I think they can start starting. I think this weekend. I think is the contract allowance. But go get right away. Take it off the table. Tell everyone that you're set at shortstop. Then to me, that makes getting a pitcher that much easier.
Of the shortstops who are available,
yep.
Can you prioritize them? Can you rank them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, from what standpoint? From which standpoint?
How much they would help the Tigers, and if you were Al Avila?
Okay, from the way they help the Tigers. Okay, of the 5, right? You got Correa, Story, Corey Seager, Javi Baez, and Semien.
Yeah.
Okay, the guy that helps at least is Javi Baez.
Okay.
Okay, then Story, then Seager, then Correa, and then I've got Semien at the top. So if you signed Semien, Correa, or Seager, I'm very happy.
Okay.
But you're also talking about...
I'm guessing that Correa and Corey Seager are going to cost more than $30 million.
Well, they've already offered they offered Correa 5 years, $160 million. The Astros did.
$32 million a year.
Yep. So there's the basement.
That's the floor.
That's the floor. $32 million a year. So you know it's going to be upwards of that. Now, the fact they only offer him 5 years, I'm thinking I think maybe these teams are shying away from these 10-year deals. I think they've kind of gotten burned, but we'll see. We'll see. But at least we know $32 million is the starting point. I think they'll get Simeon for no more than 32 if they're going to go that high.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, all these different factors. Correa is going to be the top guy because of his visibility, his youth, his upside. But I would be, and I don't know how much of a tie Correa has to Hinch.
KJ Hinch.
We don't know. Were they best buddies?
Right.
Who knows? But I just hope whatever Avila does, he does quickly. That's the big thing. Just like he did with the catcher.
I know it's easy to spend other people's money, and the Ilitches bristle at that. But if you were running this team, let's say you were in Al Avila's office, would you be going down to Chris and the Ilitch family and saying, look, I need $100 million for 3 years of Marcus Simeon?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I would say
That's more than $33 million a year.
I would say that, yeah, I would say, but I think in 5 years, I don't think it'll sign for 3. I think it's going to be 5. So I would say I need $160 million. I need the deal that Correa turned down. Or he hasn't turned down yet, but he will turn down. That's what I would.
What if they say no?
Then I think, you know who really, to me, better learn something from that is A.J. Hinch. That's the going rate for a top player, a guy you can win with.
That's the going rate for the Yankees.
No, it's the going rate in baseball. It's what if you want.
But there are a lot of teams, Jim, out of the 30, and there are probably 18 teams that are not going to be paying that.
What did the Padres pay last year for?
And the Padres regret it.
Do they?
Yes, they've already tried to move Manny Machado.
Well, Jack, we'll see. Okay, we'll see. Machado had a very good year. They didn't win, but I don't think it was Machado's fault.
Okay,
but again, the length. To me, it's not the per year money as much as the length. They don't want that money dragging out into the next cycle.
They've got that with Miguel
they
now.
Do. They learned
right.
Right. So I think they'd be willing to go higher for a shorter term than more for a longer term. But again, you look at the list of you ask about shortstops. So you get past those 5. Guess where you get to then? Jose Iglesias, Pete Kozma, Andrew Romine. I've seen those guys. I don't want even.
I'm a bad guy to talk to about that because I think that there are certain positions where if you have enough other pop, you don't have to have a great bat. And I
agree with
think
you.
Jose Iglesias is as good a defensive player as you're going to find.
But 2 things about that. Number one, it's rare when you have 5 offensive.
Right.
So that skews the market right there. But number 2, you don't have those other guys. Where the stars are at shortstop. Give me 5 guys, other positions this year, the free agents, that are as good as any one of those 5 there. You don't have them.
No.
Right?
Right.
So this is where you go because this is where the talent is. And listen, good teams are built up the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you got a good catcher. You go with the shortstop. You got Scope at second.
Scope, yeah.
Right. And now I got several center fields who could play defense.
Yeah.
I got some strength at the middle, Jack.
Yeah.
Shortstop is not a throwaway position, especially when you're rebuilding.
I will agree with that. But I'm thinking if Houston is willing to pay that, why would he leave Houston to come to Detroit?
He wouldn't. I don't think Correa's headed here. I think you're going to see a Simeon, or you might see a Trevor Story.
Who's to say the Yankees wouldn't offer Correa $40 million?
Well, or Corey Seager. One of those top.
Right.
To me, those are the two guys that are at the top of the list. See, that's why I keep hoping Simeon keeps dropping in their view because he didn't play shortstop. He's old, 32. So
Toronto was close this year.
Yeah,
they
they
had
were.
as good an offense as there was in baseball. So why does he want to leave
He
Toronto?
wants to play shortstop, and they have a pretty good shortstop in Toronto. They ain't moving him.
Okay.
So that's the big. He wants to get back to. He went there because that was the best opportunity. He wants to play shortstop.
Okay.
And again, Jack, you make a good point. If this was one guy out there, I wouldn't say break the bank. But let's face it, this is where the talent is at shortstop. And we need a guy. We need a leader.
Would you rather put your money into that position and say, we'll do what we can with the pitching, or have money to get 2 $15, $20 million pitchers?
No, I think I've already put my money in the pitching through the drafting, the sign. I'd rather, believe it or not, go more bargain basement there, but get the stud to hit third in the lineup.
Okay. when you talk about bargain basement, that means no Justin Verlander.
Nope. No, I don't. I think I've given up on that. I think he wants. I've heard $25 million, or $50 million for 2 years for that's a risk a good team can take.
Yeah.
The Tigers couldn't take that risk. Now, if he was 1 year out of the rehab and he's proved he's healthy again,
2 years.
Let's say he's 1 year out and he had like a 500 year, but then I might take it. But we have no idea what he's going to be. To give $50 million for 2 years on a totally unproven situation. Now, if I was on the cusp, if I was 3 years from now, maybe then, but not now. There's too many things that go wrong. And again, I need guys in the offense who can make it. Justin Verlander pitching one every 6 days is not going to change my team. But a guy playing every day at shortstop, hitting third is.
I don't know why, Jim, but I just see Justin Verlander with the Angels.
Because his wife's sort of L.A. and California, and that wouldn't surprise me.
And they've got Trout, and they've got Ohtani, and they've got guys there who I think we didn't see last year. They were injured, right?
And they're hungry to win. Well, the third baseman from the Nationals, who was I thought a great pick, great signing. So no, I could see, because look, and they have rebuilt. They better win, so they can take a chance on a Verlander. And with the upside he might have, where the Tigers right now they're not that close. I'd rather get a couple more serviceable pitchers, maybe one $20 million guy and a $10 million guy.
Well, the idea when you say they're not that close, then do you want a 32-year-old guy? And you're talking about a 3-year contract. Wouldn't you be better off to get a 26-year-old shortstop?
Well, here's the ages. Correa's 27. Story's 29. Seager's 28. Baez is 29.
Okay.
And
so
Simeon's
no
they're
one's
all
younger than 27.
Yeah, that's right. They're all in that early or late 20s. So you're only losing a couple of years. And I think Simeon is one of those athletes that is going to age well. Right? So you're right though. If you're talking to Chris Ilitch and you're trying to make the argument, he says, "Look, why am I spending this kind of money on a guy who's 5 years older than Carlos Correa?" It's a good question.
Who's a Cy Young winner in the American League? You could certainly make a case it's Robbie Ray.
Well, he's certainly the favorite.
So
there's no clear cut. There's no clear cut Cy Young winner this year. It could be a couple, but he's the front runner for sure. And he's a free agent.
Would you rather have a Cy Young free agent pitcher? No,
not with
you'd
the
rather
staff.
Have the shortstop.
The upside. Here's my thinking. The upside for Skubal and Mize and Manning is so good. One of those guys might end up being that guy. That 18-year game winner. One of those guys might. If I only had one, and I was gambling on it, but I got 3. Any one of those 3 next year could step up and win 16 to 18 games. Any one of those 3. So guess what? There's my guy. So I can afford to go with those guys more and put the money where I don't have any shortstop that's going to come up and hit 35 home runs. None.
And I'm going to sound like a Neanderthal here, okay? So I'm admitting this right out of the chute. And I'm not talking about Mickey Lolich pitching 376 innings, right? But I was watching MLB Network the other night, and they're talking about all the candidates for the awards. And they said, well, this guy is tremendous because he's pitched 211 innings this year. Like this was some big deal, right?
Right.
And then it's about, well, the other guy now, he's going to be in a 6-man rotation, not a 4-man rotation, not a 5-man rotation. He's going to be in a 6-man rotation. So the way the game has shifted, Jim, with starting pitchers, with the innings, and the big thing now is, and hey, Atlanta proved it. Give me a bullpen that can win the last 3 innings of a game, and we'll win you a lot of games.
And give me quantity. I need 5 of those guys, not 2.
Yeah.
I don't need a 8th and a 9th guy. I need a guy in the 5th, the 6th, and that was what did they have 3 bullpen games in the World Series?
Yeah,
that was unheard of.
Yeah,
right. So
they got a lead after 6. It was lights out.
That's where I'd almost rather than go after more bullpen help and stay away from a big name $25 million starter. I'd rather go get 2 guys who can really come in and fill in that 4th, 5th, 6th inning and shut down to get to the 7th, 8th, 9th versus that big money guy.
Do you think whatever we see in Comerica Park is going to have A.J. Hinch's thumbprint all over it? Or do you think it's going to be Al Avila's plan, or do you think it's going to be Al Avila overruled?
If it doesn't have A.J. Hinch's fingerprint, he won't be here after a couple of years. If he didn't have a strong influence in the way the team's built, he will not stay. Like that, I guarantee you. Okay. He's not gonna stay here and play with somebody else's team. I always think of Moneyball, the movie Moneyball,
Mm-hmm.
where the manager Art Howe and Billy Beane could not have been at more opposite ends, right? And they were arguing about who decides. AJ Hinch doesn't have to. AJ Hinch could have the pick of jobs. Any major league jobs, though, we could have if he wanted. So I think he stays in Detroit as long as he sees.
But this wasn't his first choice.
No, but it's
His
where
first
he is
choice
now,
was
though.
Chicago.
Yeah, but it's where he is now.
Right.
But he's not going to stay if he doesn't have a really strong say in how this team is built.
So you're saying when Tony La Russa turns 90 and finally steps down and that job opens up, if he's not happy in Detroit or he doesn't think he has control, he'll leave.
It won't last. But it'll be if after 3 years, I'm not worried as much about the record. If he doesn't feel like they're making progress in his direction, if his advice is not being taken, if Avila bows down to the money manager in the front office, that's Hinch's side. He needs to go somewhere else because he'll get a better deal somewhere else.
Do you think the Tigers have a cap number? Do you think that the word has come down?
Oh, yeah.
That this is as high as you can go?
Yep. Oh, the days of Mike Ilitch coming in at the 11th hour and signing Cecil Field or Prince Fielder,
yeah.
or Upton, PJ Upton at the 11th.
Yeah.
That's or Zimmerman. That's done. They're going to have a certain amount of money. Now they can spend it, and it's up to Avila to spend it wisely, right? Like he did with now, it cost him $7.5 million, but it might have cost him 10 if he'd waited for to be a free agent for the catcher, right? So that was wise. He got cost certainty. They want cost certainty. They don't want these upsides they can't tell. So if he's got an upside or a budget limit, then spend it wisely. And then maybe now you decide, do I want the big shortstop and I'll go less on the pitcher? It's where the priorities are. But absolutely, I think the Wings have had that now ever since Ken Holland left. They have cost certainty. They have budgets. And so there's no reason to think the Wings or the Tigers want the same thing.
Yeah, Ken Holland doesn't really like to have that reference made. He was on this show, Fred Human and I were co-hosting, and we had Ken on, and he bristled at the whole idea that he could spend whatever he wanted and that he didn't have a budget. Best team money could buy.
Ken can say that all he wants. Before the salary cap came in, he could go. He had 7 Hall of Famers. He had a Luke Robitaille and one of their at the 11th hour. He could spend what he wanted. Mike Ilitch would spend whatever he wanted.
Right.
I don't care what budget Mrs. Marion Ilitch gave him. Mike spent what he wanted when he wanted to.
Yeah,
that was the key. If Kenny went to Mike Ilitch and said, Mike, I need this guy. Guess what? There was a check.
Yeah.
And Mike's the one that signed Upton. Mike's the one that signed Fielder. It wasn't Dave Dombrowski.
Yeah, if Mike Ilitch was still there, they would be able to get Carlos Correa, and pizza would cost a nickel more.
Yeah, and maybe he get Correa
the price of pepperoni,
and he get Jimmy Ray. But again, he didn't go by a budget. He didn't go by a budget. He went by his heart.
Yeah,
right. And because Dave Dombrowski probably had a budget, but guess what? If Mike Ilitch said spend more, we're spending more. Yeah. And Mike Ilitch went directly a lot of times to those guys in the agents and made the deal.
Well, that was an unusual situation. Normally, the general manager wants to spend more than the owner. In that case, the owner said to the general manager, why aren't you spending more?
And you know what? He knew he'd be saddled with that, and he was.
Yeah.
He knew that was an emotional decision. And sure enough, Prince Fielder, after 3 years, they had 3 years, flamed out, and it was an albatross around their neck. And he knew that.
All right. I want to talk about the Detroit Pistons. And now we're going to see what the bottom feeders look like. You've got the Pistons and the Houston Rockets.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You have the number 1 and number 2 overall picks in the draft. You got Jalen Green. You've got Motorcade going at it. See how that works out. Have you seen anything to change your mind that the Pistons are a long ways away further away than we thought?
Well, I'm not sure they're further away than we thought, Jack. I think they're
further away than I thought. I thought 26 wins was an automatic.
Well,
I saw that
it was a perfect storm of negative occurrences. You got Cunningham got hurt, and not only lost the first 4 games of the season, he lost most of the training camp.
Right.
For a young 20-year-old finding his way in the NBA, he's 20 years old. I couldn't find my way out of the house when I was 20. Much less come to the NBA and play the best basketball players in the world without a full training camp. That's one. I think Killian Hayes is trying way too hard. he's trying to show he belongs or whatever he's thinking. Who knows? I think the league. I think Saddiq Bey. He's not surprising anyone. He's not catching him off guard. They know what he's got to now develop other things.
Right.
But those things have all come together.
And he was a surprise last year.
Well, absolutely, he
made more threes as a rookie than Steph Curry.
You don't think they said let him shoot? He's not going to hurt us.
Yeah.
For most of the season.
Yeah.
Right. But now they've had a whole offseason to game for him. So now when he plays they don't. This is what we do with Bey. This is how we defend him. I don't think Jeremy Grant is. He surprised guys last year. They weren't ready for him. They're ready for him now this year. Don't ever discount what the league. It's like a guy going through the first time in the order or the first time around the league. Second time around, that's when you see how the pitchers adjust to him. Same thing here. The defenses are adjusting to, and they've got to figure out if they're good players how they now step their game up to allow for the adjustments.
And I think there are some other teams we have seen in the East that have improved. Chicago Bulls, but there are others.
Miami,
tremendous improvement, right?
Absolutely.
Miami's
Atlanta,
a threat to win the whole thing. Yeah.
Philadelphia's playing better.
It's not going to be as easy as people thought, or as I thought, to climb up in the standings.
Alec and I were talking. I also wanted to talk before the show, before I came on, and we were saying that the thing about the NBA is how many star players ever came in at the very, even the top pick, and dominated. Okay, did Giannis? No. Did Luka? No. I mean, you got a handful.
Trae Young didn't.
Nope,
not immediately.
No. Michael Jordan didn't.
No.
Right? Now, LeBron probably did.
Yeah.
And there's a handful of those guys. But for the most, even the best players take a while to navigate the NBA and develop. So let's see how Kate Cunningham is doing in January. Then we'll start to make some judgments. But even the best players take a while to get to that, especially at 20. Magic was a little bit unusual, but he went on the Lakers for crying out loud.
He went on to a team that already had Kareem.
Exactly. He had the opportunity to be good. He wasn't carrying that team. Talk about someone surprising people. Magic did. They didn't know who Magic was.
Yeah.
And he had enough players that he could hide behind them, but Kate Cunningham doesn't have that luxury. They're all looking for him.
Well, it's going to be a challenge for this team, and I still think it's going to be a fun team to watch.
It's a fun team now. I think they're not winning. And they're not shooting well. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
They tried to develop their outside shooting. It's horrible to see outside shooters miss. It's kind of fun to see an acrobatic guy go in, even if he misses, because it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
But seeing an outside shooter miss is the worst, right? So until they start hitting their outside shots, it's going to look bad. But let's face it, if they win 3 in a row, we're feeling better. If they win a 5 out of 7, we're feeling much. It doesn't take that much to start to feel better about this team.
And you make a great point, because I think the media and fans, whether it's hot takes or hair trigger responses, we want it now and we want it clear. And we don't want there to be any kind of a growth pattern. Enjoy the journey. You expect that this guy, he's a number 1 pick. He should play like it, right?
Right.
Doesn't always work that
way.
But
look back at the last, especially when they started drafting all these young players. It takes a while for even the best players to develop. Again, the LeBron James, they're the exception.
Look how long it took the Houston Astros. Remember when 2013, Sports Illustrated came out with that and talked about the world champions way down the road, and everyone laughed how bad they were?
Yeah, that's right. And look at Philadelphia.
It's a process.
Embiid's he took, 3 years to really develop?
That's the thing that's most amazing, just switching sports, about Michigan State football this year. Because I said, 4.5, could they cover that? Can they exceed that? Yeah, but I didn't think they'd be over 6.
Well,
7, certainly not.
I think
no one thought they would be ranked 7th in the country. Nobody thought they'd get 7 wins.
When you got a guy coming from Wake Forest who never even came to the campus, right? Think about that. Didn't even see the camp before he transferred here. That was unheard of. You knew
one Power 5 offer out of school, one, and
Jack,
now he's a Heisman.
Tell me if I'm wrong. In the past, when as you're following Michigan State, if there was a big name transfer, you knew who they were. You knew they were at a campus. This whole portal thing has changed things so much. I don't know how you're going to predict what teams could be good unless you have someone scouting every player. And again, look, who would have thought that coming here would give him he was a good back at Wake. He wasn't a great back.
No, he was not a great back. And it's amazing how it is transferred now to other programs and other sports. I'm looking at Kentucky last night playing Duke. How many transfers does Kentucky have? Normally, they just haul in the top high school guys, and they'll continue to get some
They
of
get the
them.
blue chip guy moving up the ladder.
But now they can cherry pick off other teams. Oh, that guy's really good. We missed him. We should have got him the first time.
Or a guy that was unsung.
Yeah.
Or passed over. All of a sudden he's available. We'll grab him. We'll get him on the way up.
All right, Jim. Before we let you go, I have to take just a couple minutes and talk about the Detroit Lions. Now they get Pittsburgh, right? They come off the bye week, and they get the Steelers, Heinz Field. Any chance at all?
No chance to win that. That's playing in one of the hallowed grounds of football. If they had every player on their roster that they had to start the season, I'd say there's a chance. But with all the guys they're missing the two of the offensive linemen, the two best, maybe the best center in the game. The wide receivers are a disaster. The best line I saw was the discount bin at the dollar store. Yeah. That's where that was the one guy they signed that had some experience. They've already cut him because he was injured. The running backs, I think, have been a strength, but not with the offensive line. It hurts them. Right. Tight end, how much? If there's one guy catching the ball, guess what? I don't have to be a defensive genius to know to mark. Get two guys on him.
Hawkinson is not getting open.
No, how can you? When you got the two best. Then defensively, they lose two of their best defensive backs who weren't that good to start with. Right. The two core. So they have been under the gun from the very start, and then they lost key players. How could the best chance they have is for some other team to stumble and fall over? It ain't going to be the Steelers at home.
With Frank Ragnow injured.
Yep.
Okay. How many players do the Lions have who would even be candidates for the Pro Bowl?
The punter. That's about it. Jack Fox. He's about the only guy.
Yeah.
That's it. And Romeo Carr stayed healthy and had 6 sacks by now. He might have been a candidate, but he got hurt. And even Hawkinson would be a candidate, but when you're getting double covered and he's the only guy who they know gets and they take him out of the game, the passing game, he's not going to make it. So there's very few that are even capable of it. But with the way the game's going, they can't even get their game free. And let's face it, the quarterback cannot get guys the ball anywhere past 8 yards down the field. And I don't know if is that his ability or is that his mental game? I can't figure that out.
That's one of the reasons that the Rams wanted to get rid of him.
Because when he went to the Super Bowl and when he was making all Pro Bowl, he could throw downfield, right?
Yeah.
So is that mental?
Not great. It wasn't that he was going to beat you with his rocket.
Did he have better receivers?
Yes.
Okay. See, that's the thing.
Yes, he had more protection.
And this is a concern I have for the Lions. If they brought this quarterback in who was marginal and needed good receivers, and then decimated the receivers,
they didn't make this trade to get Jared Goff. They made this trade to get the.
I understand it, but if he's your quarterback, don't you want to at least surround him with decent players, not all bargain basement guys?
Well, some would tell you that no, because you don't want to win. I mean, you don't want to go 0-17, but you want to say, okay, we're going to get the number 1 overall pick for 3 years, and then we'll have something.
You know what, Jack? I never think that. And you're probably right. I think any sport you play to win, but you're probably right. But if that's the case, guys, that's how you get Frank Ragnow hurt. Mm-hmm. That's how you get because when you lose good, when you're getting beat like that.
Tough sell to your ticket buyers, too.
Yeah.
We're going to really suck for 3 more years.
Wait, hang on. If the Lions had this wonderful record of drafting players, who's to say that they get the first pick overall, they'll make the right pick?
Well, this year if they get the number 1 pick, there's not a quarterback out there.
How's Joey Harrington working out? How'd Andre Ware work out?
Yeah.
You want to draft those guys again?
Yeah, it's a tough situation.
How about the
Lions.
wide receivers they took multiple years in the top 6 or 8 picks? How'd those guys work out?
When we talk about how many Lions can make the Pro Bowl, I'll take it one step further. I used to say how many Lions could start for the Super Bowl champ. How many Lions could start for the Green Bay Packers? The best team in the division.
I would say probably if they were healthy, I'd say probably Ragnow, the tackle, not Taylor Lewan.
Taylor Decker.
Probably Hawkinson, and I don't know anyone on the defense who could start.
No.
Anybody,
no.
So
couple,
maybe a couple could even start, right? Or how many would be on other NFL teams even as reserves?
Yeah.
I'll bet you half the Lions team would not even make another NFL team, or a third to a half. Is that fair?
All right. On that note, Jim, we will talk with you again next week.
Yeah.
And by then, hey, maybe we'll know more about Marcus Semien.
Well, again, I hope they move quick. Whatever they do, don't be standing at the end of the line with your dollars.
Somebody's going to go first here.
Right. Don't be standing at the end of the line with your dollars and nowhere to spend them. That's what I don't want to see happen. Act quickly. If you're not going to get a shortstop, whatever you are going to do it quickly. Don't wait.
I talked to a guy who goes to car auctions, right?
Yep.
And I can't relate to this. People who have 7 cars, I don't get it. But I said to him, what's your nightmare? He said, the worst thing is to go there with money to spend and you can't spend it.
And sometimes it's because you outthink yourself.
Yeah.
You say, well, I like that one, but I'm going to think that one $3, and then you're out. If you like that one, be decisive and go get that one, and then live with it. Make it your favorite.
Yeah. Jim Stark, Michigan Sports Legacy Conservancy, and he is also a regular contributor to Press Pass. Good job last week, you and Rico Beard, I think.
Well, thank you. Team
423. That was fun.
I enjoyed it. I thought we had a lot of great topics, a lot of great content for the show.
Could have gone 3 hours.
Oh, and we only started in some of those. I mentioned to you today.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to go at a little bit with Rico about some of those things and go back because there's so much good stuff going on.
Left a lot of meat on the bone.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people would like to argue with Rico, so anybody who knows him practically. All right, we will be back in just a minute, and I hope that we will be able to grab Kyle Austin, Michigan State basketball practice, and talking with Tom Izzo about the recruiting class coming up and much, much more. We'll get his reflections on last night at Madison Square Garden. We'll be right back on The Drive with Jack.
What makes Culver's Butterburger one of America's best-loved burgers? Our fresh, never-frozen beef is made from the highest quality cuts for richness and flavor. We press that beef into a very hot grill after you order, and that's how we get that nice caramelized edge. Then we lightly butter and toast the bun.
That's what makes it a Culver's Butterburger. Let us craft one for you today. Welcome to Delicious.
As families and communities across Michigan gear up for an historic back-to-school season, Dean Transportation is looking for compassionate people to join their dedicated team of school bus drivers. They offer competitive wages and paid training, quality benefits, flexible schedules, and most of all, endless opportunities to make a difference. Apply today at deanjobs.com to join this critical effort to help students return to learn this fall. deanjobs.com.
NBC News Radio, I'm Lisa Taylor. The Kyle Rittenhouse murder trial is resuming in Kenosha, Wisconsin, after the defense called for a mistrial. Earlier, the judge yelled at the prosecution for alluding to a cell phone video of Rittenhouse taken well before the shooting that was ruled to not be allowed in court. A Rust gaffer suing Alec Baldwin after a fatal on-set shooting during filming in New Mexico. The person in charge of lighting is also suing armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed and assistant director David Halls. The gaffer is claiming severe emotional distress as a result of their alleged negligence. President Biden is at the Port of Baltimore to promote the big infrastructure bill that he'll sign soon. Biden will also get a briefing on supply chain bottlenecks from port officials. They're linked to the economic fallout from the ongoing COVID pandemic. Rhode Island's most haunted house is for sale again. Events in the house in the northwestern part of the state were the basis of the Conjuring film series. The farmhouse has been under contract, but it's back on the market for $1.2 million. Lisa Taylor, NBC News Radio.
Jack Ebling here with Matt Sloan at Graph of Okemos. Matt, people buying cars different ways now with inventory changes.
They certainly are, Jack. It's a wild time, but we're still selling them. You might not see them on the lot, but they're still coming in every day, and we're still delivering them. So what we're finding is a lot of people, they come in, and they actually place an order for the vehicle instead of finding one on the lot that they want. Then that comes in within 7-8 weeks, and they take delivery.
We'll still want that great Graph service. They're making friends.
Say you had the greatest job in the world, crafting pumpkin fresh frozen custard desserts at Culver's. Here would be your typical day. Pour farm fresh dairy into the custard maker and run continuously. Add real pumpkin puree and pumpkin pie spice. Then craft our pumpkin spice shake or salted caramel pumpkin concrete mixer.
Just like that, pumpkin's back at Culver's, but not for long. Welcome to Delicious.
A much different feel to the opening night of college basketball around the country with fans back in the stands, and it was also the start of Mike Krzyzewski's final season as Duke head coach. And his ninth-ranked Blue Devils beat number 10 Kentucky 79-71 at Madison Square Garden in New York.
Felt so good with the Garden crowd playing against an outstanding team. I mean, they're tough, and we're tough. That was a big-time game.
Freshman guard Trevor Keels led Duke with 25. Also in New York, number 3 Kansas over Michigan State 87-74. The new college football playoff rankings have Georgia at number 1, followed by Alabama, Oregon, and Ohio State at number 4. Cincinnati is 5th. His former girlfriend has accused Vikings running back Dalvin Cook of abusing her, causing a concussion. Cook denying the allegations. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune reporting that he says he was the one assaulted. That's sports. Frank Garrity, NBC News Radio.
You're listening to The Drive with Jack Epling.
Just trying to grind through camp here. Good fundamentals, build our conditioning, just keep getting better every day.
SpotlightMediaStudios.com.
Well, welcome back. It is The Drive with Jack, the Spotlight Radio Network. Jack Epling here with my producer, Alex Heward, and trying to reach Kyle Austin. One of the things you can usually count on, Alex, is that Michigan State basketball practice tendency to go long, especially after a defeat. And then you have signing day coming up. I know that Tom was going to get some questions on that, so we're trying to reach Kyle and see if he can join us for just a couple of minutes here before we go off the air. But I do want to let everyone know, and Tom is still talking. See, I just got a text. How did I know that? One thing I want to make very clear is that everyone is invited out to One North tomorrow. We have a very special Veterans Day remote, and looking forward to seeing a lot of our listeners out there. We don't get out in the community quite the way we did before February and March of 2020, but we're starting to do some of those things now, and maybe we will see you out there. Look forward to that. We're going to start a little earlier tomorrow. Going to start at about 3 o'clock for the special remote, but for 2 hours we will be out there. And then, hey, Michigan State basketball, Alex, back at it on Friday. It's odd to have college basketball games on a Friday to begin with. You know, they've always tried to keep Fridays open for high schools. And you've got the high school playoffs going on. But TV dictates a lot of things. And when television says, hey, it's, going to be a 6:30 start on BTN or whatever the case will be, that is usually exactly when it is. So that's what you should be well aware of. And Friday, don't stop for a couple of pops after work before you go to the game because you'll get there at halftime. And then Saturday, Michigan State in action against the Maryland Terrapins. And I don't know if what happened last night will have any impact on that. I tend to doubt it. I don't think Michigan State's going to come out and play any differently because they're 7th instead of 6th. Someone said, oh, they'll be really fired up because of that. No, that's not going to dictate. They've got enough to be fired up about. And it's not their ranking, whether they're ahead or behind Michigan in the college football playoff unveil, the second of several coming up. But I do think that Baby Tua, Mr. Tungavaloa, is going to have a lot of fun against this Michigan State pass defense. And Michigan State's going to have to play well in other ways. If Michigan State commits a lot of stupid penalties, and I'm talking about back-to-back personal fouls and pre-snap infractions that cost them 47 yards on a punt, and they turn the ball over more than they have been, they're going to be in for a long afternoon. And people who think that this is a walkover against Maryland might be surprised, and not pleasantly so. So I also just got a message from Carlton Valentine. This is one of those days, Alex. He just got off a flight that was delayed.
Yep, that was my guess. Yeah, I mean, when it goes straight to voicemail, because even when your phone's off, sometimes there's a ring and then it goes. When it just goes straight there, it's usually you're on airplane mode or something like that. So that was my assumption.
Well, we will be talking with Carlton again soon. I wanted to get his take today on not only the Champions Classic, but on Mike Krzyzewski because he was coach at Duke when V was being recruited at Michigan State. Think about that. Before Carlton Valentine played 1 minute for Judd Heathcote, that was 4 years after Krzyzewski left West Point to come to Duke.
Crazy.
Yeah. Think about that.
Been a while.
41 years of coaching college basketball in one spot, and that was after his time at Army. But, he has a lot of the Bob Knight influence in him. Mm-hmm. He doesn't throw chairs, and he doesn't hit his players that we know of. But in terms of that kind of discipline and attention to detail and the things that made Bob Knight successful, it wasn't just that he was a military drill sergeant, but the things that he got his players to focus on and do the way he wanted them done, pretty impressive stuff at Indiana. And you've seen a lot of the same things at Duke. So they talked about all the first-round picks that Duke has had in those 41 seasons. Are you talking about 12 Final Fours? Now, since Tom Izzo got to Michigan State in 1995, Michigan State has been to 8 Final Fours and Duke just 5. But Duke had a long run beginning in 1986 where they were in the Final Four every year. I mean, they were Final Four after Final Four. I think that is a record for the non-UCLA division in terms of consecutive Final Fours, including back-to-back national championships. So you don't see that happen very often. And Krzyzewski, this love-in, we're going to be watching that all year long, Alex. So if you didn't like it last night, get used to it. But Duke beating Kentucky, and, we saw a game a couple years ago when they met. 2 years ago, I believe. And it was one of the worst losses in Kentucky history. So, it can happen. But last night, Kentucky and Michigan State, I think, are going to win quite a few games. And they both suffered disappointing defeats. And, hey, when you lose to Kansas and Duke, it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Well,
you certainly wish you played better.
And the way the Champions Classic is set up, I mean, every year there's going to be 2 really good teams that start with a loss. So, I mean, it's just the way that it shakes out.
Yeah.
A lot to improve on. But, yeah, like you said, Michigan State, Kentucky, there's still going to be there's going to be plenty of W's in that column by the end of the year.
And Michigan State has some stiff tests. We talk about Western Michigan and Eastern Michigan coming into Breslin. But, hey, how many teams would play in the Champions Classic and then head down to Indianapolis to play Butler? And then, you've got Louisville coming in for the Big Ten ACC Challenge, but Michigan State is also going on the road for the Battle for Atlantis. And there's going to be a couple of really good teams coming out of there with 2 losses, and it is possible that there could be a team that contends for a conference championship go 0-3 in that tournament Thanksgiving week. So Michigan State has plenty of work to do, but I think the good part about starting a season like this, Alex, and you've been to the Champions Classic, you know what it's like. You know what the environment is like and the intensity, is you have a great measuring stick. Now you know what it's going to take. It's not like practicing against your own guys. Mm-hmm. It's not like watching film of another team. You've actually seen what a number 3 team looks like. And how far are you? Well, you're at least 13 points away from that. But I think Michigan State knows now that it did a couple of things really well, and in some areas better than expected, and out-rebounding Kansas, the play in the middle, the play of A.J. Hoggard. Then they have some other guys who are going to play better. So I think from that standpoint, Michigan State is a cold slap in the face and a lesson.
Yeah, well, this is Izzo blueprint, right? You schedule them all now. This isn't college football. You don't have to win every game to reach your goals. So, yeah, do what you can to sharpen your sharpen your toolkit, and all that matters is you're playing your best basketball come March. That's really the end of the game with college basketball. I mean, obviously you don't want to go on a 5-10 game losing streak or anything like that and miss the tournament altogether, but obviously Michigan State has showed that they're going to be in position for that year in, year out. So, yeah, you just got to be playing your best basketball at the end of the year. These games, I mean, they're not meaningless, but at the end of the day, they don't matter too much.
Well, I always contrast Michigan State's scheduling philosophy, Alex, to Syracuse's. Mm-hmm. And Jim Boeheim, he has gone more than 3 months at the start of the season without ever leaving the state of New York. And if you can do that, I don't know that you get a true read on what your team needs to work on. I don't think it is as productive as Tom's anyone, anywhere, anytime scheduling philosophy. So I think that the results prove that. And, when you have 10 regular season Big Ten championships in the first 26 seasons, you're getting a guy who's there for 4 years. He's going to win a championship. And with the exception of a couple of players, there are only 2 who have been at Michigan State in the Izzo era who have not been to a Final Four. So, that speaks volumes. You do it his way. He tends to know what he's talking about. It may not always be fun. You may want to have cotton in your ears, all those kinds of things, but eventually he knows how to get where you want to go. That's the bottom line with this. And for Michigan State football, hey, it's all on the line. In these last 3 games, no one's expected this team to get where it's getting. I was talking with Jay Green earlier today. He said it's kind of house money, but that's not satisfying to fans now. When you start 8-0, your expectations are ratcheted up. People are saying, well, at the minimum 11-1 or 10-2 would be okay. If you had walked into a casino at the beginning of the season, okay, you had walked in there at the end of August and you said, Michigan State line is what? Oh, 4.5. Okay, well, I want to bet that they'll win double that. They would have taken your wallet, your shoes, your belt, your hat, whatever you happen to have with you, they would have taken it. And no one expected Michigan State was going to go unbeaten in September. Certainly no one expected that they were going to be unbeaten in September and October. Now, the way this schedule is backloaded, November is a little more daunting, especially when you start off with the loss at Purdue. But people who say, well, yeah, lost at Purdue, they've been asleep because the Boilermakers went into Iowa City when Iowa was ranked number 2, and they didn't just beat them, they clobbered them. Mm-hmm. And they beat an Oregon State team, which you watch. They're going to give Oregon a good game, the last game of the season. So from that standpoint as well, Purdue's had some challenges. They also played Notre Dame, by the way. And people forget that game was, hey, Purdue was right there. With 10 minutes to go in that game, they have a chance to take the lead in that game. And Notre Dame is a top 10 team. So Purdue is, they're no slouch. Let's just say that. And on the right day, they can be very difficult. And against Michigan State, as you saw, they can be exceptionally difficult. All right. Want to thank Rod Barmack. The Final Four is not on the schedule. Check out that website. If you are a Michigan State basketball diehard, get in the habit of listening to that, and you will get more information, more breakdowns, more analysis than you can find anywhere else because of space and time limitations. These guys can talk all day, and they usually have great things to say. And also Trent Bally, we appreciate him being with us from Impact Radio on campus, fresh back from Madison Square Garden. Appreciate him coming right here. And, of course, Jim Stark, the Michigan Sports Legacy Conservancy. We'll see you tomorrow afternoon out at 1 North, everyone. Have a great night.